Going hot. So, good morning, everyone out there in podcast land. This is Tammy Terrell, Texas Desert Rose, and it's been a few weeks since I've put something out there. I hope I didn't lose you. Please check out Facebook page Texas Desert Rose, where I post all of the shows. We're also on Spotify, iHeart, and iTunes. So follow and share. Really appreciate that. The mission of Texas Desert Rose is to be able to put people's lives on the recording, to share the vulnerable parts of their lives, the parts that we don't typically talk about, in an effort for the world, for those that listen, to hear and see the other side and why we do what we do. There's always reasons for repeated behavior, and that's my intention on this show. Today, I feel very grateful to have Mr. Ike Grimes. Hello, Ike.
Hi, Tammy.
Ike and I met when I worked in Naples, and where Ike and his beautiful wife still reside. And you've been in Naples for how long, you and Trina?
I've been here 31 the last 34 years.
So I'd venture to guess that you like it there.
It's home. I've been here basically my entire adult life.
And if I remember correctly, you're from Oklahoma, no?
That's right.
Which is amazing. A little bit of Oklahoma and Texas met in Naples. So, and it's been quite a ride. I will tell you that I specifically asked Ike to come on and share his life because it's really taken a turn, I'd say, in the last year. And but just in general, I find you to be an interesting person, Ike, and you're so open about your life that I thought you would be the perfect idea for a guest. Are you open to people reaching out to you at all, or would you rather just kind of keep it to the recording? And
I don't have a problem with people reaching out.
So I'm thinking that your experience, which we'll go into, is going to maybe help validate some people, and they may have more questions. So I'm glad to know that you're open to that. So, okay, so 31 years in Napoli. What brings you to Napoli? What brought you to Napoli?
I originally was sent over here when I was an active duty sailor.
And
I did 4 years of active duty time here, and when my enlistment ended, I got out and went to work as a contractor, still working for the Navy.
All right. Go Navy. Okay, so tell as much as you're willing to share, kind of what it's been like for you, well, even when you met your wife, about how long have you guys been together?
Well, my wife and I, we've got an interesting story. She got here in 1988, just a few months after I got here. She was also active duty Navy.
Wow.
We worked at the same command. I was in the middle of a divorce at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And after my wife and I separated, Trina and I started dating. And we dated here in Naples for about 2 years. We split up when Trina was getting out of the Navy. She went back to the States. And it was many years later, almost 9 years later, that I went back to the States for a couple of years, and Trina and I reconnected when I went back to America.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that.
Again, and we dated for about 3 years and finally married in the summer of 2000, just before we moved back to Naples.
Meant to be.
It was, I guess.
Meant to be, indeed. I will tell you that when I would hang out or staying at the Agora, and, the two of you would come over, often. I thought you were guests there. It was really interesting to watch the two of you. You are very outgoing, and Trina is really good about just allowing you to have that stage. And you can tell that she's very, very proud of you. So
she has a stage of her own. when we're in a social situation, we don't have jealousy issues.
No, not
when
at all.
Trina and I walk into a party, we're not joined at the hip. We walk in, we survey the situation, and then we go our ways, and we both work the room. We're both social, outgoing people.
In fact, I didn't know that you guys were even together for a while. Not that you're completely separate, but you just do your own thing. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that marriage has been pivotal and tested in a lot of ways in the last, has it been about a year ago that you were diagnosed?
Yes. Just about the time that Naples went into lockdown at the beginning of the pandemic.
So February, March of last year. Wow, you had your own pandemic, I guess.
Exactly. The time coincided just perfectly, I suppose. It was just about the time the lockdown started that I started to have a persistent sore throat.
Okay.
And I kind of put off going to the doctor because of all the lockdown.
Well, and it's not that atypical in Naples to have a sore throat because of the air quality.
No, correct. It is. It's not that uncommon a thing. I hadn't even had a winter cold that year, so it wasn't surprising. I thought I had some kind of bug. And finally, after it went on for about 2 weeks, I made an appointment, went into the doctor. They did a preliminary exam, referred me to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. The ENT doc took one look down my throat and said, "We need to do a biopsy."
A little bit of a shock.
Yeah, just a bit. So we scheduled that for shortly thereafter. They did the biopsy. They called me back in a few days later and told me that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, and I did a half marathon for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and they did some training on Hodgkin's, non-Hodgkin's, and I cannot remember if you're going to have. I know in general, if you're going to have a cancer, I believe that's the type to have, or am I wrong?
That's pretty much what the doctors told me. Because of my lifestyle, the fact that when I drink fairly heavily. I smoke heavily.
Uh-huh.
I don't make healthy choices. So they just automatically assumed it was going to be something horrible. My docs were preparing me for a diagnosis of squamous cell carcinoma, which seemed like the most likely culprit to show up on my tongue and throat. And what the doctor actually said when we got the biopsy results back was a cancer diagnosis is never good news, but as cancer diagnoses go, this is great news.
Well, and I can't imagine the myriad of emotions that you went through, because I'm trying to put myself in your place. And how long was it between first doctor's appointment and biopsy and final type of cancer?
Almost a month.
What?
Yes, it was a little over 3 weeks from the first visit to my GP until I actually got the results back from the biopsy. Because the biopsy had to be done under full anesthesia, so I had to schedule time in the OR. And as a contractor over here using the Navy hospital facility, I'm bottom priority list.
Yes.
So everything takes a bit of time.
Well, and that had to be the longest 3 weeks for both of you ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely an emotional roller coaster.
So would you mind sharing what that phone call initially, the GP, the general practitioner appointment, what that phone call to your wife and family was like?
Well, it was... I tend to be kind of stoic about these things, but it was emotional, but I wasn't overwhelmed by it, I guess. I mean, I had already, when the doc predicted that, when he ordered the biopsy, he was already pretty sure it was cancer. And I don't know, I accepted the fact that this was probably going to be the price of my lifestyle choices. associated with smoking and drinking and other bad behaviors.
It's a blood, right? It's blood cancer?
Yes.
Okay.
And to appear in throat and tongue is actually very rare.
Wow.
So we got that false signal up front, and they prepared me for something worse. And I don't know, when the actual diagnosis came in, I suppose it was a bit of a relief, but because their immediate prognosis was that this is
bad stuff.
Very treatable and often curable type of cancer.
Absolutely. The prognosis is actually pretty positive thanks to research and fundraising and all that. I was very impressed with the LLS Society. So let me ask you this. We'll go into some of those details and kind of how you are and where you are today, but what about well-meaning friends and a lot of different cultures and who give advice? What kind of things have you heard?
I had more so in the very beginning because, as I said, I'm a pretty public, pretty open person.
You are.
Once I had contacted close family, closest friends, finally had that conversation on the phone with my mother, told her what was going on.
Ah, you still have your mother, yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I had spoken with my mom, I went ahead and did up a Facebook post and announced to the world, I've been diagnosed with cancer, blah, 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 gave the details. And
to amazing accuracy, actually.
I have about 1,500 Facebook friends.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of response from that post. And the most of it was the typical, you've got this, we'll keep you in our thoughts and prayers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But I did start getting the private messages from the well-meaning, but in my mind, somewhat naive people.
Yes.
Who were suggesting all these great things that they've learned about. The alternative medicine cures, the herbal remedies, and the essential oils, and the diet changes to crazy stuff, and spiritual healing, and
Sure.
all kinds of other things other than what I consider to be proper cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm. Didn't fit for you.
No, they don't.
And
I'm not opposed to alternative medicine. I try to keep my mind open. I understand that there are things that we don't know.
absolutely.
I know that medical research often proves that ancient societies that used herbs and other things to treat, they often find that there's actually some science behind that. I mean, the natives were chewing willow bark to relieve pain long before we discovered aspirin, which is made from the same compound.
Good example. It's a really good example.
Those things didn't fit for me. I was already in the mindset that we're going to go with the aggressive, if proven, medical treatment and beat this thing.
Yes. I like that. And I'm assuming you probably weren't opposed to doing some of those things in addition to, but not instead of.
Sure.
The radical treatment.
I'm not going to use that instead of chemotherapy.
No. I would imagine I'm asking that when you found out about this news, when I found out that I was miscarrying, my reaction emotionally was to just remove the foreign body. You never know how you're going to respond or feel, but that was my feeling, my reaction. And I'm wondering if you didn't feel the same way.
I did, but at the same time, it was a little strange because my only symptoms were this pain in my throat and on my tongue.
So it didn't feel real?
But when the diagnosis came back, they told me lymphoma, which pretty much affects your entire body, the whole blood and lymphatic system.